Hellraiser Deader is really the last movie that there was any thought put into it, but by now, this being the 6th installment of the series, I find they are just rehashing old ideas with some new technology. Carrie Wurr is the lead actress in the film. I recall her from some other bad or B-type horrors like Anaconda and Eight-Legged Freaks. Well, Eight-Legged Freaks was pretty funny come to think of it, and she looks pretty good in all her movies. I actually first remember her from Sliders. I forget the character's name though. The movie centers around Amy Klein, a journalist. Her boss, Charles, receives a tape, and on it some girl blows her brains out, and a man, only known as Winter, appears to bring her back from the dead. This appears to be some kind of cult, and she goes out after the story. But, like any Hellraiser movie, nothing is quite as it seems, and she's part of a much larger picture, with Pinhead sure to be at the bottom of it. Amy goes to this girl's apartment, and the morbid atmosphere that is the Hellraiser scene continues with a disturbing, hung, supposed corpse of a girl. The puzzle box is back in the picture. There are two things needed for a basic Hellraiser movie, the box and Pinhead. Everything else is built around that. It would be interesting if somehow they backed off of that and moved into something different. I don't know what that would look like, I'm just thinking out loud. She watches a new tape and it warns her not to open the box, but then she plays with it and it opens in like 5 seconds. Now, not to pick on that scene, and I'm aware of the explanation that she's chosen or whatever, but weren't these boxes really hard to open? I mean, in number 2, the doctor had teams of messed up people working on it. I get the feeling she's just along for the ride, as so are we. She pursues the story, and at one point this leads her to a subway train. Now, what kind of subway car is this? Never seen that on the TTC. There are a lot of slow builds to nothing in this. I suppose a Val loot and bust attempt, but none were executed as well as previous attempts in the series. And it's not mastered like in the movie The Cat People from the 40s, but that's another topic really. The first meeting with Winter is rather disappointing. The character doesn't seem to command a serious presence in my opinion. He declares himself the keeper of the box, part of the La Marchand toy-making family. But wouldn't his death mess up the timeline? I mean, having him in that role makes no sense at all. Why not just come up with something different? Also, I'm not a fan of the CGI in this film. It looks cheap, and I guess it must have been. They are Hellraiser movies after all. But why not stick with what made it appealing in the late 80s? The effects in those films hold up better than the new ones, and this film's only 7 years old, not 25. There is also your typical misdirection from the film, but I suppose this wasn't a dream, this meeting did happen. Again, like Hellseeker, the misdirection isn't very clean, but it's not as bad as the 6th film. This is a little bit more linear. Pinhead shows up at the end with his Cenobites and mops the floor with Winter. It's always great to see Pinhead doing his thing and coming out with those chilling lines, but it's getting old now in this series and it just feels like routine. Maybe I've just watched too many in a row. In the end, nobody was found in the building, including Amy, all presumed dead, and then Charles just replaces her. What a dick. I actually find similarities between him and Pinhead. But the acting, well, sometimes it's good and sometimes not so much. Maybe that's the charm of some of these Hellraisers, but I think it could have been a lot better. A lot of these scenes are a little overplayed, and I think it could have been improved. There were also some very intense scenes though, and the pace of the film was great. It got into the thick of things rather early, and we didn't have to edge our way in like some of the others. There was also the perfect amount of Pinhead, or maybe just a touch more would have been nice. I just find regulating the star antagonist for the end of every film renders his dialogue to being a little repetitive. My domain. Who I am is no concern of yours. Some pain reference. Yeah, we all know what to expect. Inferno got a little away from that. The first 2 films as well, they were pretty fresh. Anyway. Well, it's not terrible. In fact, I think I'd even go back and watch it again. It's not the first 2, or Inferno, but it's not the worst either. I retract my last review a bit. I'd place this one over Hellseeker. So give it a shot. Not a ton of gore, but a little bit more Pinhead and a straightforward plot. HMRG out, and more Hellraiser on the way. It's a Hellraiser-thon.